Hello everyone and welcome to class training for today. My name is Samuel Martin. I will be your presenter today. I'm just giving us a little bit more time, maybe one or two more still filtering in, trying to connect to audio, things like that. Okay, there we go. So, before we do begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and its collection of surrounding islands and their connections to land, sea and community. I myself have a connection to the lands of the Awabakal people and would like to pay respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with us today. I'd like to note that these lands and waters were never ceded and that sovereignty has never been extinguished and that this is, was and always will be Indigenous land, and that reconciliation is very important to CLC's Australia. Let me introduce our facilitator for today, Oliver Moore. Hello, Oliver.
Hi, Sam. Hello, everyone. I just thought I would run through a little bit of housekeeping really quickly. So the software we're using doesn't allow you to unmute. There is a questions panel down the bottom. If you have any questions, write them in, and if they're particularly good for discussion, we can take you off mute ourselves so we can chat about them. This session is also going to be recorded, and the recording will be available on the website in about a week.
Thank you, Oliver. Okay, so today we're looking at drill down and DIY reports today, and this is getting data from Class 1 standard reports can't. The standard reports were set up in a very specific way to answer very specific questions, mostly about the data you need to report for NLAP, but oftentimes people want data that is completely different to that, so we have a bunch of drill down and DIY reports. Before we do start today, we have a quick question for you. Hopefully that will be popping up on your screens any second now. There it is, quick question. Have you ever run a DIY report before? While you're answering that, I'll just go through a brief overview of this session. I think I've already done the introduction to drill down and DIY reports. We'll have a look at the drill down reports, a few of those, then we'll jump into DIY reports. We'll probably spend most of our time on those today. We'll go through things like saving and sharing, and we'll briefly dig into telling stories with data again today, like we did last week, and then finish up the session with the usual stuff. There's the results of our poll. So it's fairly evenly split. 77% of people voted, and it's kind of a bit down the middle, but if we've got 53% of people who've never done a DIY report before, then we'll be starting from the start again this week, just like we did last week. Okay. An introduction. Okay, standard versus drill down versus DIY. So as I was saying before, the standard reports can't give you the data that you sometimes want. So we've got these other options for you. The field list and other basics, that's basically what we will be talking about today. So rather than spending time on an intro, let's actually get into it. Okay, drill down reports. We've got a few examples for you today. Just give me a second here. Sorry about this. Okay, all right. Yes, to answer that one question we've already gotten, apologies for the delay there. Yes, we will be looking at that in about, that's going to be towards the end of this session, so about 30 to 40 minutes from now. Okay, drill down reports. So I've got a few here, a few of the more common drill down reports that are used. So let's jump over to class and have a look at them. Again, this is not the general user session, so I've already logged in. And again, I'm just going to click on reports and accountability and then reports. That will bring up the list. Hopefully it doesn't open to page 2, which it has. Let me flick back. So this is page 1. If you're just opening, I've been in here earlier today. If you have just clicked on that, this is what it will open to. And we're looking at a couple of pretty specific reports in here today. So I'm just quickly going to jump back just to give myself a reminder, which is why I wrote these here. The N03.1, that's a pretty common report. Let's go and find it. This is one that people are talking about pretty regularly, so it must be getting used. So let's go and have a look at it. There it is there, right down the bottom. So this will give you services by law type. Okay, so we click on that, and following on from last week, we can see that already this is different to a standard report. Now, what is the same is the filter panel. This is much the same, slightly different, but much the same. But this here, where the data loads, this is a bit different to what we saw last week, and we can see that this is pre-filled with some stuff already. So this is what it looks like for drill down and DIY reports. This is different to the standard reports. Okay, let me load some data into this report. I'm just really quickly going to load in about 12 months worth of data. I'm just going to select all the funding categories for now. I'm not even going to go near the demographics. We're not really talking about that today. So this is what it looks like when a drill down report loads. So let's have a look at what we've got in here. So here's a little gray box, and this says no of service. That actually means number of service. They've just abbreviated that first word. Okay, so so what we've got here is a bunch of pre-filled stuff, and some of these are the fields that we've got in class on our services screen. That one will be on the services screen, the service type, as is that one. Some of them are on the client screen or even other screens, and we'll get back to that a bit later. So what this is telling us is that this is counting the number of services, and it's breaking it down by which law type are they, and then breaking it down by which problem type are they, and then giving us the numbers for each individual service type. So let's start from the start here, the law types. So we can see we've got for civil law, what problem types do we have for civil law, and then we've got totals. And then we've got criminal law, and then we've got family law, and then legal system and legal help. And then we get grand totals at the bottom. And then we've got the same problem types, but they're listed for criminal law for all the different law types. And we'll have a look at some of the actual data we've got. So here we can see we've got all the different service types listed. And for here we can see we've done 2 legal advices for the child protection problem type. Under the civil law type. We could have a look at the criminal law. We've got some numbers in here somewhere. That 0.5 is an interesting one. So we've got a half of a service in referral, and that's in offences against government procedures, blah, 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 and it's under criminal law. You may be asking why half a service. It's the way the referrals are counted. It's a bit complex, but the referrals are broken up into part services because a single service may have more than one referral counted to it. So this particular service, the client may have been referred to several different places. So all of those referrals are broken up into parts of the service. So that's basically what this report is telling us. So I may move on to the next one. We'll have a look at another one. The N12, this is to do with problem types again. Let's go and find the N12 report. It should be down here. It's not. Where is it? Let me just do a search for it. There it is. Let's have a look at this one. Okay, so as we can see, we've got a similar setup to what we had in the last report. I'm just going to throw some data in. We can see a few differences to the previous report. We've got a few extra things here. So we're getting a little bit more data here. So this is breaking down this report. So this is giving us a number of problem types. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got the state reporting body. Just so you know, all of these reports today, if this comes up, will be set to no state reporting body because of the centre that I'm logged into, CLC's Australia, our centre, which does not have a state reporting body. Okay, there's the centre name, and then this is breaking down the services by geolocations, and then giving us the numbers by law type. So in the Blue Mountains area, we've done one service. We've got one problem type listed in the Blue Mountains region under criminal law. Now, we've also got a thing up here, the service type. So this is the filter section of these drill down and DIY reports, and I'll come back to that in a little bit later, what all these different sections mean. We'll have a look at those when we get into the DIY reports. But essentially, why this is here is that we want to filter this, this data that we've got in a particular way. So this has got the service type up there, and it's giving us all of the service types, but we could filter that out if we wanted to. If we wanted to remove discrete services, let's just say information, referral, and triage services, we could remove those, and that filters out the numbers and gives us the data for just these the service types that we've got selected in here. Okay, I'm now going to show you what these little grey boxes, what they are, where they come from, and what you can do with them. So as I was saying before, we've got something called the field list. Anyway, I won't flick over to my slide. The field list, I'll just show you where it is. There are actually two separate ways to open the field list, and I'll show you both of them, and you can use whichever one works best for you. So anywhere up the top of this, this top section of the report, you can right-click in there and you'll get this menu with 3 items in there, and you may be able to see that the middle one says Show Field List. So we'll show the field list, and this is it. So we can pick it up, move it around, leave it wherever we want. I'll show you the second way to open it by closing that, and then I'll move over to the right of the screen. And we've got this button here, Customize, and if you hover over it, you'll get some drop-down options. I don't want any of those. I just want to click on that button itself, Customize, and that will open the field list. Now, when it does open, it's usually small. So if you hover over the bottom right of it, you'll get that arrow, and you can drag it out so you can see what's in there better. And again, you can pick it up and move it anywhere you want. Now, these are all the fields that we've got available to us in this report. So the problem type field is available, the outreach, the office location. So we've got the center name in there. If we wanted to add the office location, we can absolutely do that. We can pick up that. So these reports work on a drag and drop basis. So you can pick up this field, drag it over, and we need to tell this report where we want the data to display, and I'll come back to that a bit later. What we can do is I want this to display in between center name and SA3 name. So I'm just going to drag this down there, and when you see those 2 arrows appear, the one that points up and the one that points down, you can just let go, and that will add that field to that place that we told it to. It's not showing me any office locations. All right, that wasn't a great demonstration. Let me see if I can do another one, which will actually allow me to do another demonstration of removing the fields from a report. So you might decide, I don't need something in here. I don't need the office location anymore. You can pick that up, drag it over, drop it anywhere on the field list you like, and that will remove it from the report. I'm going to do LGA name, pop that in there and see if that does anything. Okay, so now if you want to close this field list, just click the X there. Okay, now this is a good way to discuss what happens with the way that you order these fields, particularly here in the rows of the report. Again, we'll come back to that a bit later. Anyway, the way that you order them will affect the way that this data is displayed. So currently this is showing us the LGA name, then the SA3 name, then the SA4 name, and it will order them in that way. So it's ordering them by this council area, and then all of the options within that council area. These are all only got one option in that, but what we could do is order this a different way. So we could pick them up, pick the fields up, move them around, and that will display differently. Again, not a great demonstration, but we will probably come back to that a bit later as well. Okay, let's go and have a look at that last report. This is a good one, the top 20 problem types. We do get questions about this report reasonably often. So let's go and have a look at it. Okay, PT01, the top 20 problem types. And again, I'll just throw some data into this really quickly. That's about it. Won't take much longer. So I'll load that data in, and before we do, we can see there's nothing in the columns here. Again, I'll discuss that in full detail in a bit. So this is giving our problem types, and it's giving the number and the proportion. So as you can see, our proportions start at the highest 20% and work their way down. And you can see the grand total will give us, it gives us 100% of the proportion. So it gives us the top, that will be the top 20 problem types, and so it lists them by the ones that have the most number of services. So that's a good report. Feel free to play around with it if you like. Okay, I can see we've got some questions there. Oliver, do you want to let me know if there's if I can answer some of those questions right now?
I think I've answered most of them, but do you want to talk pretty briefly on how ordering, how changing the order affects the display and versus the data?
Yep, sure. Let me see if I can find something here. Okay, yep, okay. Let me try this and we'll see what happens. I probably should have set up a bit of a better demonstration of this. Apologies for not having done that. I'm going to take the problem type and move that to the very left. We've only got two fields here, the problem type and the law type. So putting the problem type in the left of this report, as you can see, has given us the problem types and it's listing them alphabetically. Then what it does is it lists the law type. So it's arranging or ordering the data by whichever field is furthest to the left, and then it'll order it by whichever field is next, and then just keep ordering it in that fashion. So I'll put it back in a second, but as we can see here, it's giving us the problem type, and then it's telling us what the law type for that problem type is. And the numbers will be, the numbers of services that we've done for each of the service types for this particular problem type. And this law type is just telling us which law type this problem type sits under. Okay, so if I put that back, it's now ordering them by the law type, and again, alphabetically. So it's giving us the law type, then it's giving us the problem types that sit under that law type. And the numbers will, again, be the number of services done for this law type and this problem type, sorry. And then this is telling us that this problem type sits under this law type. I hope that explains that reasonably well. It's a little bit tricky to explain this with this particular report, but I would like to jump into the DIY reports, which would help us explain this a bit better. Okay. Are there any other questions that I could answer now, Oliver, or could I answer that one a bit better?
No, I think we're right. I reckon you're good to keep going.
Okay, great. Thank you, Oliver. All right. So, okay. Before we do have a look at a DIY report, there's a couple of notes to go through here. Naming conventions, I'll go through that first. And then there's a couple of things, a couple of extra things in the filter panel that we'll see. Actually, there's a few of them. The additional reporting dates, additional fields, and custom fields and show all dates. Okay, let's go and have a look at a DIY report. All right, so this is the list of reports, and I've got two pages here. Now, as I was saying last week, the reports depend on which reports you get for your class account depend on the role that you have set. In class, you may not have all 63 reports. If not, and you want more like the DIY reports, again, you can ask your class administrator to change your role, or just give you access to the reports that you want. Okay, I'm going to flick across to page 2 of the reports, and here's all the DIYs plus the N12 report that we looked at earlier. Okay, so this is our list of DIY reports. So the first thing I'll go through is the naming convention. So they all start with DIY so that we know that it is that type of report. And then there'll be a couple of other things listed as well. So this one at the top is client and additional detail. So the way that the reports work is that the fields available in the report come from the screen which is named in the report. So the client screen, all the fields available on the client screen will be available in this report, and all the fields available in the additional detail screen, all of those fields will be available in this report as well. Okay, now last week I believe I was saying that 90% of the time there are two reports used, the F01 and the C03. With the DIY reports, it's very similar. Probably at least 90% of the time, the report that gets used is the DIY service client. So all the fields on the server screen and all the fields on the client screen. This seems to be the report that is used most often, and is definitely the report that I use most often myself. We do have this one and that one have been set up. They're saved reports, but we'll come back to that a bit later. So I've got reports that will give you data about your documents and about projects, community projects as well. Okay, let me open the DIY service client report. This is the #1 DIY report we've got, and we'll have a look at it. So as you can see, there's a couple of differences here. We haven't got anything pre-filled here, and the filter panel looks a little bit different. So let's start with the filter panel. So just like most of the reports, we have to give it a date range. What you can do is give it a rolling date range. So what you could do is set it to say, I just want the data for the last 12 months to date. And class will set the date range for you. You could say, I want this financial year, and it will give you all the data from the 1st of July 2020 until, it's pretty unlikely that you would have any services listed up to the 30th, but that's coming up pretty soon. If you wanted the previous financial year, that is not available. I thought it was. No. You could do this by the previous quarter, this calendar year. You can choose a rolling date range if you want, or if you don't want to do that, just leave it as a date range and set the date range yourself. Okay, the next thing to look at is the additional reporting dates, and this gets a bit complex. I'll show you what options we've got, and this will be different for the different DIY reports. I'll go through these options. If you do need help with any of the others that you find in other reports, let us know on the help desk, and I'll be giving you details about how to contact us on the help desk a bit later. Okay, so at the top of this, and what is automatically selected when you open this report is service date completed service. The reason for that is that our funders are most often looking for data for services that we have delivered, not ongoing services, services that haven't been completed yet. So that is why that is the pre-filled option for this, but there are different options. So this option will give you services that are discrete services because they don't really have like a close date or anything like that. They're just delivered once you enter them into the system. For the ongoing services and the representation services, I believe they need a close date, or maybe it's the service status that needs to be closed to be able to get get those numbers if you choose this. Let me open that again. Service open date. So if you select that, it'll only be the services that have an open date within this date range. Service close date, that's pretty self-explanatory. Only the services where there's a close date within this date range. All open ongoing services. This is testing my memory a bit. What does that do? Yeah, right. So if I select that, this has set the start date to the 1st of January 1970 and the end date to the year 3000. I didn't even realize that. Okay, so this is just finding all the services, everything that's going on. And we've got a news option here, active services. Feel free to play with it if you want. It is quite complex. I don't know if I should go through it right now. If people do want me to, please let us know in the questions. And I'll try to explain it, but it is quite complex, and we're actually going to change this pretty soon anyway. I'm just going to, for now, select the completed completed services option, and leave it at that. Okay, I need to give it a date range. That'll do. Okay, I'll move on to additional fields. So we also just made a change to these DIY reports recently. So if you want any data for multi-select fields, the most common option example I can give you there is the problem types field. You know, I'm sure everyone's well aware, you can select as many problem types as you want. So that's a multi-select field rather than a single select field like service type. You can't select this is a legal advice and it's ongoing, non-legal, whatever. You can only select one option there. For any of the multi-select fields, you'll need to tell this report that you want that data. So for fields like administration, I don't even know what that field is. Where are the ones I was just talking about? Problem type. If you want data for problem types from a DIY report, you'll need to select that in the additional fields to get that data in, and you'll get that data. If you don't select those, you won't get the data. If you load a report if you set up one of these DIY reports and you're not getting the data you want, have a look in this additional fields, and if you can find the field, one of the fields you've got in here, select it, just tick it, and you should get your data that way. Funding categories, I'm just going to select them all. Okay, the next thing to look at is include custom fields and show all dates. So yeah, if you want data for custom fields, let me open the field list, and I will show you where to find the custom fields in this field list, and I can already see them. It's a little bit tricky, it's not too difficult. All of your custom fields should start with a C, an F, and an underscore. And if you want any data for those, you'll need to tick this checkbox. You may be wondering why we've got these kinds of things set up, like the additional fields and the include custom fields kind of thing. The reason for it is that these reports run much faster if you don't need data for something like a custom field or a multi-select field. If you don't need that data, if you need data for something else, the report will run much, much faster. So there's all the custom fields. And show all dates, I may come back to that in a bit. Let me give you a bit of a demonstration. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to find the fields. As you can see, we've got a long list of fields in this report. There's a couple of different ways to find them. Let me show you what they are. I'm already showing you the first one. Is simply to scroll through, find your field. Where's the one I want here? And drag it to where you want it. I'm actually going to remove that in a second. The other way to find your fields is to do a Control F, I think it is, if you're on a Windows machine. I'm on a Mac, so it's Command F for me, to bring up your little find option in your web browser, and you can tell it what you want to look for. I'm looking for number of, not finding anything there, no, because I've spelled it wrong. Number of client, that's exactly the one I want. So I can just now pick that up and drag it to where I want it. Okay, I'm actually going to remove both of these and go through just one more thing very briefly before I show you how these DIY reports work and what we can do with them. That doesn't look right. Let me close that and reopen it. Okay. All right, so when you do open this report, we get these things up here, and we've got drop filter fields here, drop data items, row fields, and then column fields. I'll give you a quick explanation as for what they all are. I'll start with the data items, drop data items. There's only two fields you can drop in there, number of clients and number of services. That will change a little bit for the different DIY reports, but there's very few fields you can drop into the data items fields. And some of our people on the help desk actually recommend not using that unless you really need to. The row fields are where you're going to drop most of your fields. The column fields aren't used that much. I will show you what you can do with them. And the filter fields, again, I don't recommend using this personally. I tested it just the other day for something and realized that it doesn't really work great. So I'm going to show you a better way to filter your reports rather than using the drop filter fields here section. Okay, let me drop some data in and I'll show you what we can do with a report like this. That's not going to work. Okay. So something a lot of people want to do is find lists of things for their staff members. I'm gonna need to really quickly throw some stuff into the filter panel here. Okay, what else can I do with this? I'm gonna go client ID. I'll pop that in, client in custody status. I'm not interested in that one right now. Let me drop that in there. I'm gonna add in the service ID. It's not going to get it. There it is. I'm just lining them up left to right. Then I'm going to drop in the service status. Okay. And then I think I'm going to close all of this up and load some data in there. That should be fine. No, it won't, because I'm actually looking at completed services, but what I'm really looking for is services that are still ongoing. So what I'm looking for here is the services that my solicitor or whoever the staff member may happen to be, whether they be a social worker or whatever, a counsellor or something. I want to find a list of services they're still working on. So you could use the service open date or the all open ongoing services. I might select that one. That makes a bit more sense to me. And I already know this is not going to give us the data we want. Actually, is it? Let me check this. No, it's not. So if I try to select different options in here, it's not giving us what I want. And I already know that the reason for that is that the assign to field is a multi-select field. So I'm going to go into the additional fields, select service assigned to, and then I'm going to load the report again. And I'm going to see that I get data now, just like I was talking about before. Now the client ID, service ID, and service status will be single select fields, so we don't need to worry about those. Okay, now I was saying previously that we've got this section here, drop filter fields here. Now I recommend not using it. In this case you could, and I'll show you what happens when you do. If you're doing things that count numbers, like number of services, things like that, I don't recommend putting those in the drop filter fields here. I'll show you what to do in just a second if you do want to do that. So we could put that in there just to kind of clean up this report, makes it a little bit cleaner, just makes the data look a bit nicer. And now what we can do is filter using this little funnel icon. So what we can do is click show all. That will deselect everyone. Then we can find the staff member that we want data for and click OK. And we'll get a list of services assigned to this particular person. Then you could filter this field. In fact, you could even drag this field to the left and you could filter it. This is not going to be a great demonstration, because this is all dummy data. But what you could do here is filter it to say you only want services that are still in progress, on hold, or open. And I know this is not a great demonstration, but if you had services options in there for things like closed services, things like that, you could leave those unticked to give you the data for only services that are still going on. That was not a good demonstration at all. Let me put that back. And that'll give you a list of service IDs, and you could then work with that in some way, however you wanted. You could share this report with that particular person and ask them to give you updates on all of those services. You could do whatever you like. You can add more fields to this, or you could take some of these fields out if you don't need the client ID, something like that. Now, as I was saying before, if you've got, I can't think of a great demonstration right now, but if you've got things that count numbers, I recommend putting those down here into the rows, not into the filter, drop filter fields here section, and doing your filtering that way. You can use the filter fields for things like this and it will work, but if it's counting numbers, there's a bit of a question mark about that. Okay, so that's pretty much our main DIY report that is used most often. Let me just flick back to my slide. I think I've gone through pretty much all that. Show all dates, I haven't gone through that. So let's have a look at the column fields section as well. I'm going to bring up the field list again, and I'll show you this one particular field. I know exactly where it is here, month. So we've also got weeks. Anyway, I'll show you what these do. You can drag that field in, drop it into the columns. That's a good place for something, go away please, something like this. And that will break down the data by the month, the week, or whatever you've got in there. Again, not another demonstration that wasn't great. Let me show you something that we can do. We could say how many services, and we will put that into the data item section. How many services are assigned to this person? And obviously it's going to give us a total of 1. We could remove the service ID. It's probably not going to be a great demonstration again either, mostly because of our dummy data that we've got in here. But this is something that you could do, and this will break down the data for you by months, and you can see, you know, if you wanted to, how many services this individual has assigned to or had assigned to them in December and all these different months. That is what I would recommend using the columns section for, breaking down the data that kind of way. Okay. I might quickly ask Oliver again if there are any questions that I could answer right now.
No, Sam, I think you're good to go, unless you have any special tips for making grand totals add up.
Okay, that's something I've been talking about recently. It is a bit tricky. I got some advice from one of our brightest individuals on the help desk, who reminded me, because I always forget this, that the DIY reports will count your services slightly different to the way the standard reports do. Count them. It all comes down to counting rules. So the DIY reports will count all of the services, whereas the standard reports, or at least most of them, maybe not all of them, but most of them, will actually, they won't count your information referral and triage services. That will, actually, let me demonstrate it. That will make a difference to your grand totals. I'll demonstrate something with that pretty quickly. So I actually just recommended to someone, what was it? I know. It is the client type. You could use this. Again, this is not going to be a great demonstration, but if we just have a look at the client type field, you could put this in somewhere and have a look at that's not what I wanted at all. Let me pop that up there. If you use this field, sometimes it will give you the option to select full client or no, that's not working at all. Full client or non-clients. The way that was, I was going to say that's not how you do this anyway. How you would do this is that you do the service types. Do we have that? We don't have it. Okay, there we go. So what you do is you add the service type. So if you want these DIY reports to match the numbers that you get from your standard reports, you can add the service type, filter out the, again, not a great demonstration, they're not in there. You can filter out the information referral and triage services and check your numbers against your standard reports, and they may add up better that way. Now, I'm thinking that probably didn't really answer that question, but to answer that question, what does happen is that if you've got a client who had let's say that you gave them an advice service in September, and then for whatever reason they needed another advice service which you delivered to them in December, they'll be counted there and there, but the totals will only count unique clients, which is why your totals won't add up. To make this work better for you, I'd recommend contacting us on the help desk because this does get complex, a bit tricky, and can take some time to figure out properly. Thanks, Oliver. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have a request to see a more complex DIY report, and perhaps in doing that, talking about where to drop particular fields, or like, I guess, better ways of structuring reports.
Okay. All right. Let me see what I've got coming up on my. I just want to flick over to my slides, dear. All right. I'll come back to that. Okay, a more complex report and better way to structure. Okay, I'll bring up the field list again. So let's say we wanted the number of services for service type assigned to. I'll remove service status. I'll put assigned to at the start. I'm kind of winging it here, so I'm not really sure what I'm doing. A more complex report. What could we do? And how to order the data. So we've got the client ID. Okay, I'll put in the client. I know. If I look under F, I've got first name, so that'll be your client's first name. Okay, and then I'll go last name. So this is probably, again, not a great demonstration either, but we've got our, we've got our clients' names in here. You could put the clients' addresses in, and you could order your clients by area if you wanted to. Not sure why you would want to. Anyway, as you can see, this is ordering this by the client ID. If we wanted this to order this list by the client name alphabetically, what we could do is put the last name in front of there. Actually, what I will do is put the last name right there, in that position. I'll put the first name in the next place. Then I'll have the client ID. And then I'll have the service types. So now what we've got is a list of services assigned to this particular individual and the client's names, which will be listed alphabetically by last name, then first name. And if we wanted to change that around, if we wanted to look at the clients by their first name and get them in alphabetical order that way, we could. This is also a great time to stop and just really briefly and tell you about one other thing. So we've got another icon in these little boxes, our fields, this little arrow icon, which is just ordering. If I click that, that will list those in reverse alphabetical order. And as we can see, everything changed So now what we're getting is list of services assigned to this individual, broken down by the first name of the client in reverse alphabetical order, and then it's giving us the last name of the client, then it's giving us the client ID and the service type, and for some reason we're getting the number of services and breaking it down by months. I hope that kind of explains the ordering a bit better, and kind of slightly more complex reports. Apologies that these aren't great demonstrations. I have set up one for you, which is coming up a bit later. Hopefully that might help to explain things a bit better. Oliver, do we have anything else I could go through, or would people like me to try to explain that in a little bit more detail?
We haven't had anything else come through, Sam. I think you should keep chugging away and I'll interrupt if something comes through.
Great, thanks, Oliver. Okay, let me move on to this, saving and sharing. So you can set up custom reports and then let others use them. Let's go and have a look at how. So let's just say that you've set up a report, a DIY report here, and you want to use this report again at some time in the future. What you can do is save this report. So you would click the Save As button, and then you need to do a few things here. Give it a name. I would recommend probably a slightly better name than that. Give it a name, something of number of services broken down by blah, 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 whatever name you want to give it, whatever makes sense to you. You can give it a description. I don't know that that's going to be of much help to you. There is this checkbox, Save Changes. Changes in filtering are saved persistently. So that's kind of mostly about your start dates. So if you tell it you want the data for the last quarter, whatever your date range is, it'll automatically change that for you whenever you open this report again in the future. So to be able to share this report with someone else, you simply click Save to save that report, and we'll be waiting around for just a little while. It didn't close that other report. That report is still open, and we could continue working on that one if we want. What it has done is open this report that we saved in a new tab, and we can see we had our DIY service client report there in that tab, which is still open. And now we've got our new tab, number of services, whatever we named it, will be in this tab. And now we've got a new button, sharing. So if I click that button, we can give access to this report to other people. Is that not going to open properly for me? There it is. Okay, great. And we've got a couple of options here as well. So there's roles or just individual users. I'll start with the roles. So if you want to give this to everyone who is an advanced admin in your center, you can give them access to see the report, but not actually do anything with it. You would give them locked. They could see the report and filter some of the fields. You would use that option. You could give them access to save the report so they can make a copy of it and play with that copy of it or use that copy of it. And then you can give them an unlocked editable version of the report, which they can, if you give them that, they can do whatever they want with it. And then this is pretty self-explanatory. The rest of this, if you wanted to give it to everyone with general staff access, you could do that. And whatever version of access you wanted to give to them, you can give to any of the different roles. If there's actually just a single individual or just a couple of individuals or a few individuals that you wanted to give access to this report to, you could do that and you get the same options, locked with filters, unlocked save as, and unlocked editable. I can give James full access to this. I can find Oliver and give Oliver full access to this and then just save and close. And those two individuals will have full access to this report. So that's saving and sharing, a little bit of a brief demonstration of that, but we are starting to run out of time. So I might move on pretty quickly because I wanted to go through this with you. So telling stories with data, this is one of the things I like to do, and I'll set up a bit of a demonstration for you. A client's journey using actions. So I know that this is something that some centers want to be able to do. I've spoken to several centers who've said, we just don't know how to do that. So this is a fairly brief demonstration of how you could do that. I'll just flick back to the list of reports. I'm going to show you a different one, the DIY Service Actions Report. This is a report that does get used a little bit, and I'll show you something you can do with it. And thankfully, I set up some instructions for myself on how to set up this report. So I'll get it set up pretty quick, and then we can talk about what you can do with this. Okay, so I'm going to throw in the service type. Okay, I'm going to throw in client ID. And I need the service ID. It's the next one, that one. And one more, action notes, which should be right at the top. Okay, great. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit of filtering before I throw some data into this. Actually, no, I won't. I will throw some data in, then I will do a little bit of filtering. Okay, so I'm going to filter this report to only, I'm going to just deselect everything and say I only want legal advices. Now this, for some reason, is going to give us clients with a blank client ID. Don't ask me how that's even possible. I don't know. Probably something to do with the early days of the system. Excuse me. I'm going to get rid of those blanks. Okay, so what we see here is some data. And so this is, again, coming back to telling stories with data. Some of the centres have been telling us that the funders are saying that it takes 30 minutes to deliver an advice service. We're just looking at legal advices here, and I've got one I set up today. And so this is showing us that these are the actions on this one particular service. So the actions are the pre-appointment work. Then there's another action where the solicitor gave the actual advice. Then that advice has to be written up in class. Then we do a feedback survey from the client. Then we get the solicitor to review the notes that were written up. And then the principal solicitor goes back and reviews everything. Now, the next thing I want to say is a little bit contentious, and I'm not actually sure I should even really be saying this, but there is a thing, it's the, what am I thinking of? Estimated time spent. I'm really not sure if I should even be mentioning this, but you could throw it in there. I'm not going to, because it is quite a bit contentious. Anyway, what you could do is use something like this to say, well, we actually spent 30 minutes on the pre-appointment work, but then the 30 minutes that the funders are talking about, that's the solicitor giving the advice. That's where that 30 minutes is. Let's just pretend I don't work at a centre and never have, so I don't really know, but maybe this took something like, let's just say 15 minutes to do the rest of that work, another 15 minutes for the solicitor review, and then another quarter hour for the principal solicitor review. We would then see that this one particular service adds up to, what was that, 30 minutes, an hour. That's an hour and 45 minutes for one particular service. And then if I just scroll down just a little bit, I can see, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I've got one client here somewhere. This one client here, which I actually recognize that client number. Anyway, this one client has got a couple of services there. I'm sure there's another one here somewhere. Anyway, if you started to add up these kinds of things, you could see that this one service actually takes maybe an hour and 45 minutes rather than the 30 minutes we've been funded for to deliver this service. And then if we start to add up these clients who've got, multiple services, then you start to, I'm not great at math, but if you've got a couple of services there, well, we're told that it takes about 60 minutes to deliver those services. But I'm not sure what an hour and 45 times 2 is, but it's a fair bit higher than 60 minutes. So and as well, one other thing I wanted to say is that if we thought about the numbers of advice services that you're giving over any kind of date range, this is over 12 months, I'm fairly sure it would be quite a bit higher than 2 or 3. So this starts to tell a kind of interesting story, or could potentially tell a bit of an interesting story about how long it takes us to deliver our services. Okay. Oliver, I might just throw back one more time to see if there are any more questions I can answer before we wrap up.
No, Sam, no more questions.
Okay, thanks, Oliver. Excuse me. Okay, all right. We will wrap up then because we are starting to run out of time. Finding documentation and getting help. Let me roll through this like I do with most of our sessions. Okay, if you just click that little help button, that will bring you across to our website and open it directly to the class documentation. And then in this menu down the right side, we have reporting and accountability. If we click on that, there is some information in here about DIY and drill down reports that you can read anytime you like. There it is there, DIY reports. If I click on that, we should see something in here about the drill down reports as well. This is advanced functionality, apparently. What have we got here? DIY. I don't know that we've got anything on our website about drill down reports. I could have sworn we did. Anyway, let us know if you do want to read that stuff. We will find it for you. If you do read this stuff and it's not helping you, it's not giving you the answers you need, you might want to come through to help and support, where you can contact us on the help desk. Once this loads, we will see that you can contact the help desk. There's a couple of bits of really basic information there. And then if you do want to contact us at the help desk, you can email this email address, icthelp@clcs.org.au. And we also have an online, an online portal that you could use as well. I'll open that up in another browser. While that's loading, I'll let you know we've also got the phone number. If you do call us there and you don't get an answer, please do leave a voicemail. We do listen to them all and we do respond to all the voicemails as well. As for the class portal, if you would like to use this portal, I believe you have to have emailed us at least once to this email address to be able to set up an account. If you have set up an account, that's very strange that I'm not logged in there. Let me see if I can log in. That's usually logged in for me already. Anyway, there we go. Once you do log in, you'll get this, and up in the top right, you can have a look at all your requests if you want. I don't have any requests in the help desk, so there's nothing to be able to show you there. If you do want to set up a new request on the help desk, it might be something like a reporting request, a request for training or further training, an enhancement or feature request if you want these reports to work slightly differently or vastly differently, or maybe you just need some clarification. We also do support a couple of other systems on this portal, LexisNexis, the NAS portal, or maybe you've just got some general feedback for us or need a clarification about something that might not be listed in this list of class stuff or anything like that. Okay, that's about how you get help and find documentation for DIY and drill down reports. I hope this has helped. I know it was a little bit brief. We might consider extending this session to 90 minutes next time because that is a little bit brief. I might just wrap it up there and say thank you to our facilitator today, Oliver Moore, and thank you for being on this session. We really do hope this helped. We know these reports are very difficult and that people do have a little bit of trouble with them because they are a bit tricky. If you do need help with them, please do contact us at the help desk. We are more than willing to help you out with anything we can. Okay. Thanks again, and bye from us at CLC's Australia